Welcome back to Beyond the Plot podcast. If you've ever wondered what it takes to write not just one book, but 15, then today's episode is for you. I'm joined by bestselling UK author Laura Carter, whose feel-good romantic comedies have won the hearts of readers around the world. We chat about her writing journey, the inspiration behind her highly anticipated 15th novel, Out of Bounds, and how her love of sport, healthy living, and all things romance shape the stories she tells. Laura also opens up about experiencing burnout, why she decided to completely flip her daily routine on its head, and how making that change has helped her become more productive, more creative, and ultimately happier. It's an honest conversation about balancing ambition with well-being, something every creative can relate to. Whether you're a romance reader, an inspiring writer, or simply looking for inspiration to rethink your own routine, this episode is packed with practical insights and encouragement. Out of Bounds is out now, available in UK bookstores and on Kindle. So let's jump in and meet Laura Carter. Hello, Laura. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me on the pod.
Anytime. I'm so glad you're on because obviously we did do that quick segment, which was 5 authors, 5 questions. And I loved hearing your answers. So I'm so happy that you are on to tell your full story because I think it's really fascinating and can't wait to dive in and share that with everybody. But before we do, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. So I am Laura Carter, author of primarily rom-coms and sports romance. That's kind of my happy place. I've diversified at points in my career, but that's where I'm happy. I am an international bestseller, which is lovely news. I'm translated into multiple languages, and my most recent release is, as you know, Out of Bounds, the second standalone sports romance in the Wildcard series.
Yes, and I've just finished that at the weekend actually, and I loved it. I couldn't put it down. It's one of those books where I just got excited to go and read it, and so just fell in love with the characters, fell in love with the storyline. Yeah, I think it's great. And I haven't read I love romance, but I haven't read too many sports romance. So thank you for introducing me to that.
Oh, that's lovely. I think that's the best feeling in the world when you're reading a book and you're kind of eager to finish what you're doing so you can get home and sit down with your book. I love that. So thank you for saying that. I'm so pleased that the book made you want to read on.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let's step back because as you know, I love just hearing where your writing journey began. And I always like to take it back to, have you always been a writer? Did you always love writing stories as a child, or what did that look like for you?
It's an interesting question, actually. If you had asked me a couple of years ago, I probably would have said that my writing journey began when I was sitting on a beach in Australia. I was living out there at the time between my legal degree and starting to work for a law firm. It was back when Facebook was sort of in its infancy, and I would write snippets of my travels. So I pitched up in Australia, but had been traveling the world for some time. So I was writing snippets of stories, just travel stories, kind of journal type things, back to family and friends through Facebook as it was. And they were saying to me, "Oh, these are so funny. You should write a book." So I thought, well, yeah, for sure. I'll just write a book, as you do. So if you'd have asked me a couple of years ago, I probably would have said everything began with that first handwritten manuscript whilst, sunning myself on the beaches in Australia. But actually, I've been asked this question a few times, and I think that has made me look back to when I was younger. And I did actually have short stories published in newspapers, petitions as a girl. So, and the other thing that I did was I was very into drama, not just life's dramatic flair, but I used to, go to a drama academy, that kind of thing, where I would write scripts to be performed, obviously short scripts. So I think actually on reflection, I probably always had a bent for the written word. I remember being 5 years old and writing songs and singing them into the mirrored wardrobes of my parents' bedroom, and they were very, I love country music now, but they were very lyrical and storytelling in the way that country music is.
Yes.
So even as far back as sort of being 5 years old, I probably was destined to do some kind of creative writing. But I didn't pen my first novel until, oh gosh, when was it? Maybe 2009?
Okay. Yeah. That's really interesting that you said that you remember, well, you thought that you remember a moment where you started writing, but actually when you dug deeper into it, it was all these other moments in your life where you don't realize. And as you said, you know, writing song lyrics and scripts, and yeah, the creativity comes in many different ways, doesn't it? And you probably always had that passion in you. Just took maybe the Australia moment for you to actually sit there and think about it.
Yeah, I probably honestly had time to myself where I wasn't studying or, you know, running around, moving on from one thing to the next. And it is interesting how all of those kind of building blocks from being a child mount up to, okay, now you're a novelist. And I think that is actually reflected still in an author's career. I think we learn every book, we're developing with every book. It's very much a learn on the job kind of career, I think. I think we constantly have these building blocks. And yeah, it is interesting to look back and think, yes, that's where it all began, those little seeds when I was a girl.
Yeah. So what made you choose the genre that you started writing in? Because you mentioned there that you became a lawyer. Did any of that transpire into your first novels, or did you kind of stay clear of that?
Gosh, so much. Too much. It's interesting if you look back at my novels. So I'm at 17 published. I've written a few more than that either aren't yet published or will never be, safely tucked away in a drawer. And actually, kind of lawyers in the finance industry do pop up. As my agent said to me when I wrote my book, Rom-Com Stuck in Paradise with You, she said, "You've somehow made tax seem sexy." So yeah, I'm going to take that.
Yes.
So actually being a lawyer does pop up. It's interesting. I think going back to, well, why romance? I think I've always been a hopeless romantic, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to have grown up in a family, you know, where there was a lot of love between my mum and dad, and, you know, dad would go out to work, but never before giving mum a kiss, and, you know, they had date night. And so that's how I grew up. That's what I was familiar with. And I know I'm very privileged to have seen that. So I think it's probably what I've always aspired to as well. And even when I think back to, there's one book in particular that I credit with getting me into reading adult books, The Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks, which actually Sebastian Faulks is a historical writer. And it's a book that's set across the World War, but there is a romantic thread in it. And the book that he went on to write after that, similarly set across World War II, I think that one is, Charlotte Gray. And the romantic thread through that was really what kept me reading. It's what keeps me reading through detective novels and everything. So I think I would always, even if it hadn't been romance as the genre, I always would have written romantic books.
Oh my God, there's so much romance in everything, isn't there? People say, "Oh, you know, I don't like romance." You're like, well, you watch a movie, there's romance in there. You listen to a song, it's all about love. It's everywhere.
Like James Bond. Why does anybody actually love Casino Royale? It's because everyone goes, hang on, James Bond is finally in love.
Yes.
We love him and Vesper. And okay, yes, that goes tragically wrong. But, you know, that's when people are dismissive of the romance genre, I just go straight over my head, because I just think that is utterly pathetic. There is, like you say, there's a romantic story in everything. And that's generally what keeps people hooked. Will they or won't they? Is this really going to happen? And the very first book that I had published, actually my first book deal, so it was dark billionaire romance, so romantic thriller set in London. But I wrote those books when I was working as a corporate lawyer in London. And the female protagonist is a corporate lawyer. The male protagonist is a billionaire CEO. And so, you know, to your point, I took what I loved, which was romance, and I took what I knew, which was law, and I combined them. And therein lies the start of my publishing career.
They say that, don't they? They say, like, you should write what you know. Like, so you do see a lot of the authors who have had a career or have a career in a certain industry, and that comes into their stories, and that's maybe the genre that they choose to write in, which
definitely
love doing it as a profession. So, and you know it, so why not write about it?
Yeah, I think the only caveat I have to that is that, just for any, you know, writers or budding writers listening, I don't think you have to write what you know in the most literal sense.
No.
I think that you can only ever author a book through your own perspective, because that is all you know, right or wrong, you know, however your biases are skewed, that is what you know. And we can try and be empathetic and put ourselves in the shoes of our characters, but you're always going to be doing that as an author with your own perspective. So I think it's not necessarily, okay, I'm a lawyer, therefore I have to write about been a lawyer, but
Yes.
my whole life experiences and what I'm exposed to and the water cooler
Yes.
chat and all of that kind of stuff, it's all of those influences are going to be in my writing, because how could I possibly write any differently?
Yeah. And the same, I mean, before we step into your kind of journey to publication, you then transitioned right into sports romance. And I know that you love sports yourself, right? So what made you do that transition from dark romance to sports?
So hand on heart. So when I wrote, so it's my Billionaires of London trilogy. That was my very first book deal. It wasn't the first book that I wrote, but it was my first book deal. And when I wrote that, I actually wrote it fade to black, closed door. And I had given the manuscript to a lawyer friend of mine who'd been in publishing for a while before changing careers to being a lawyer. And I gave her the book and I said, look, just be brutally honest with me. What do you think? Is there anything here? And she said to me, look, we're riding sort of the crest of 50 Shades at this point. This was I wrote that book around 2010 and got my first book deal. Well, I started writing it around 2010 and got my first book deal with HarperCollins 2015. So this was when the market had gone. We'd been through Twilight, we'd been through 50 Shades, Yellow and Malpass was huge, Sylvia Day and the Crossfire series was huge. So she said, where you've closed the bedroom door, think about opening it. And I distinctly remember a moment where I was sort of hanging around in the house, swinging around a door frame, going, no, I can't. Can I? I'm a lawyer. I can't do that. And then I thought, you know what? I'll just save another document, a new document, and I'll dabble. I'll go and open the door where it seems to feel right and natural. So I did that. And that manuscript, I had no idea what I was doing. So I didn't have an agent. I had literally no idea what you're supposed to do when you have finished writing. So literally without ego, just pure ignorance, I submitted that to the big five publishers, imprints of all of the big five, and happily got offers on the book from all of them, and then back and got an agent. So I had a kind of upside down start to my career, if you like. Now, what happened was, when that book was acquired, we then took my open door version of the book and ramped it up in spice level again. So whilst I really enjoyed the book, enjoyed the experience, it wasn't really my comfort zone sitting in that kind of dark and spice place. It wasn't what I'd intended to do. What I loved to watch and read was actually rom-coms. So I spent a lot of time then backtracking from those first books and toning everything down a little bit. And it took me quite a few years actually to transition through to rom-coms. And I did that I had a bit of a break where I wrote very romantic women's fiction. 2 books are in this together, and Table for Three. That was sort of me saying, okay, if no one's going to allow me to stop the high spice, I'm just going to stop writing romance. Well, I was writing very romantic women's fiction, but I'm going to stop that. And let's re-go on terms that I'm a bit more comfortable with. So that's what happened. And then my current publisher looked at my backlist, basically acquired everything from my backlist, and gave me the opportunity to go back and play around with that spice level again and bring books that had one series that had started to be published, which is now the first book in that series. It's the Brits of Manhattan series. It starts with The Law of Attraction, a lawyer and a cupcake baker, and allowed me to go and edit that back to a rom-com space where I really wanted to be. And sort of the rest is history from there. So then sports romance was really just a natural progression for me. I was pitching more ideas to my publisher that were still rom-com, very much rom-com. Just be it the male or the female in the ideas was also an athlete. But because I love sport and I'm such a kind of health and fitness and well-being advocate, if you like, this was just a natural progression for me. This is the first time, by pure happy coincidence, that I've hit a market trend. I have never hit a market trend. I don't write to the market trend. It's pure accident. And so, A Rookie Mistake was born, really pitched as an idea, continuation of rom-coms with my publisher, but happened to be in the world of American football. And so started the Wildcard series.
Amazing.
So happily, I'm in this kind of blend of rom-coms and sports romance.
So did you change publishers at that point?
Yes. So I've had a few publishers, actually. I've worked with a few publishers. So my first books were, well, as it was then, they were acquired by Harlequin. HarperCollins then acquired Harlequin. So they were my first dark romance books. I moved with the Brits in Manhattan series that I'm talking about and the Law of Attraction. I moved to Kensington Publishing in New York with those. But they were still quite spicy. So they were rom-coms, but quite spicy. Then when I had that switch to romantic women's fiction, I moved to Canelo in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
And then my current publisher, Boldwood Books, as I say, they took me on and they took everything.
Wow.
So we got all the rights back from other publishers, not foreign translation, but we got them back. And now I'm housed in one place.
How was that to navigate? Because obviously different publishers, different requirements, meeting new editors, it's a journey in itself, right? So how did you kind of navigate that, and what maybe were some of the challenges that you faced there?
Look, the help of a good agent is, my agent is amazing. I have a really good relationship with her. Tanner Greenstone Literary. She is my second agent, actually. So that kind of was part of the switch from the New York publishing houses to London, because I had a New York-based agent, and then I switched to a London-based agent. Some of that was actually geography, because I was living in the Caribbean.
Oh,
I was on the New York time zone, and I was being published in New York when I first started. Then I moved back to London time zone, so it made sense for me to have an agent in the UK. But also, I think we hit it off. Tanner gets what I'm about and the space that I write in. I love her editorial. So yeah, for me, I know not everyone wants an agent or sees the full benefit, but for me, having an agent in your corner is really in gold. And especially when it comes to times of playing bad cop and good cop, because there's an element of your sort of CEO of your own publishing career, but you also want to have a very good relationship with your editors and publishers. And for that whole relationship to be smooth, there are pinch points where you disagree with your publisher, or contracts need negotiating and things. And I think that's where it's good to have that kind of more objective voice, agent, a step removed, and then you get to keep smiling over here whilst your agent is, kind of not quite in a dogfight, but is doing this slightly more confrontational piece.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to understand that publishing careers are just not linear. There's a lot of movement, and some of that is changing market spaces, but also some of it is just discovering yourself and your own voice. And like I say, I think a career as an author is very much learning on the job. Not only learning your craft, but you're learning the way that you want to hone your craft. You want to present your voice and your writing. And so some of it is just a natural consequence of either the market has shifted from dark to rom-coms back again, or whatever it's doing. And some of it is, look, I'm not happy writing in that space. It's not my comfort zone. I want to be over here writing the laugh out loud rom-com. How do I get myself there?
Sports romance is trending now, right? So, I mean, you entered it when it didn't have the readership as it does right now, but that is the thing with trends, isn't it? They come and they go, and they come again and they go again. So how's that impacted you as a writer and your books now that we're in that real sports romance era? Like, do you see any change in the industry and the readers that are now reading your books? And what does that kind of look like for you in your, because you've got a third one coming out in your trilogy. So, or how does that feel for you?
Yeah. So as I say, I think honestly, it's happy coincidence. I was going to be writing sports romance anyway. I don't write to market trends. And to be honest, I don't advise it either, because writing so far in advance, particularly, if you're traditionally published as I am, I think indies have a bit more flex in how quickly they bring a book to market. But particularly if you're traditionally published, at the moment that you pitch the book, it could honestly be 2 years before, all of my books that come out through 2027 are already pitched and either written or partly written. So, you're writing so far in advance, the market could just shift. We
So
who
true.
knew fantasy was going to blow up the way it had? Great if you happen to be writing that trend, but I think it's more important to be comfortable and happy where you're
Yes.
writing. And what, in terms of what it's doing, hopefully great things. I think we're only just doing that now, and sort of off-campus heated rivalry, things like being picked up by Netflix and Prime. I think they are propelling the market alongside Book Talk, which is has had a huge influence on what's trending, what's selling, and in a great way bringing things to the forefront of traditional bookstores too that weren't pushing things like sports romance.
Yes.
So I think the effect is still to be seen to some extent. I can feel the shift, and that's great. I mean, I can give you an example of, people probably don't realize. So my second Brits in Manhattan book is actually a sports romance, Two to Tango, and that came out years ago. It's actually probably the lowest seller of the 4 books in that series. Yet if people knew about it now, it would probably be, the highest seller. It's an interesting space. I think social media is huge for it. It's really nice to see. So A Rookie Mistake has gone into retail space in the UK, and I'm getting the tags in reels and posts on blog of A Rookie Mistake, and this you can feel the traction. You can definitely feel that. But fast forward 2 years and the trend will be doing something else.
We'll be on something else. Yeah. It does that cycle.
Probably won't be something I'm writing. If only I'd pitched Romantasy 3 years ago, that now,
no, it's huge.
Yes, so it's a happy coincidence for me. But I mean, in terms of anyone listening who is thinking about trying to write to market, unless you can do it very, very, very quickly, without compromising quality, then I don't really recommend it.
No, I've only heard once where a publisher has said there's a trend about to happen. We want to get on that, and they've picked an author to write in that genre. Yeah,
but an element of publishers and booksellers being able to set the trend, of course, just in the same way as in the fashion industry or whatever. What is it, the line in The Devil Wears Prada about the cerulean blue? You think that you chose cerulean blue? You didn't. Cerulean blue was chosen for you. So, there is an element of that. And I think that's where we here. So I think what you're talking about is IP contracts, where a publisher will go out to, usually they'll go out to agents and say, do you have any authors on your books who write in this space or would be willing to write in this space? Sort of give quite often they'll give a one-line pitch and then say, okay, now throw an idea at me for that story. And then a handful of authors might go and put in pitch ideas. So much of that is dependent on the publishers then putting spend into marketing.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
So if they want to push an idea, it just costs money. And so they can shape the market, but it's also got to stick. At the moment, it's also got to go in trend on social media. That's and if it's not going to do that, then
I mean, with regards to marketing then, because you've been in the industry a while, you've produced and wrote many books. Do you feel that the marketing has changed, like the funding that the publishers put into that? And then how does that impact you as an author now? Because we've got social media where you're pushing a lot of that content and those books. But from your perspective, do you think that has changed over the years?
Yes, I do. And I think a lot of that is to do with market saturation. There are just so many books out there. And I think, streaming services are really changing the way the market works as well. They're the angel and the devil, much as they are for screen too. It means there is so much content out there, so much choice, which is wonderful. And it's bringing more authors to market, which is fantastic. And people are realizing dreams of, being a published author. But it also means that with choice, it comes at a detriment to how many books any one author is going to sell. So it feels very much like the very top of the market is a very, very, very small percentage, and they're almost guaranteed their sales. Beyond that, it feels more than ever like a dogfight in marketing. I don't know if readers realize, but the amount that an author earns through a streaming deal is so low. The person who earns least in the whole of the food chain through publishing is the author. And so how much a publisher is willing to spend on marketing any one particular book, I think, is also shaped by the knowledge that actually the number of sales that counts as successful. And I wouldn't put a figure on that, but I think that actually that figure is probably lower than ever because it's just because of that saturation of the market. You know, what does 20,000 copies now mean the same as it used to? Does 2 million copies mean the same as it used to? And as I say, outside of that very, very small top percentage, that's, you know, we're really in a bundle. And I won't fall down the rabbit hole of AI and all of the books that are coming to market that ought not to be, but yeah, things like that are really, you know, they're having a career as an author that is financially sustainable. They're making that really difficult. And so many authors have, you know, have a second career. Not many authors are providing for themselves and families solely on an author income.
Yes. Yeah, that's 100%. So, I mean, if you think about your career, like if I have to put you on the spot, what is the favorite book that you have written out of all the ones that you've produced?
Oh, that's hard. So I always love my most recent book. That's the one. The characters are still sort of living in me, and you know, when the book is just released, as Out of Bounds has now, I still have this wonderful glow of I don't fully know how it's going to be received. I don't know how many sales it's going to make. I don't have my first royalty statement on that yet, and so I get to just live in this wonderful bubble of sort of blissful ignorance. I believe these characters are amazing, that their romance is the best one I've ever written. But you're catching me at an interesting time, actually, because I've just finished editing what will be my fall. So whilst Out of Bounds is releasing, and I am so in love with Tanner and Annie, I also I'm starting to get that sense of, okay, they're not mine anymore. You know, I've given them over to readers and they belong to somebody else now, and I can stop living with them. And I've been living with my characters for The Game Plan, which is the third book in the Wildcard series, which is an ice hockey romance. I've been living with those characters for months now. So, you know, they're kind of my BFFs at the moment. So I'd say always the one that I've just finished writing. But there's always something in a book that I look to. And, you know, when we talk about writing from your perspective, there's always part of me or my life or something I know in a book, even if it's kind of hidden gems. So there are books that are very special to me, be it because it's the first one that was released or a particular subject in it. I mean, Stuck in Paradise with You, I don't think many people realize it's a couple who are stuck on a private island in the Caribbean, and they're Scorndexers forced together and by this eccentric billionaire they're both working for unknowingly until they get trapped in the island. And there's a Category 5 hurricane coming, and they end up weathering the storm with a dog in a concrete bunker. And so when I was living in the Caribbean, I lived through Hurricane Irma, which was at the time, still is the greatest, most powerful hurricane to have made landfall out of the Atlantic. It was huge. I mean, obviously it can only ever be a Cat 5, but people were saying, you know, this is if it was such a thing, it would have been a Cat 7 hurricane. It was a real experience, to say the least. That is exactly how I weathered the storm with my husband and our dog in a concrete bunker. And so that book will always have, you know, a special place for me because it was based on so much truth. And I think there are different elements of that. And there's a lot of catharsis in a lot of my books too. So, you know, one of the biggest compliments I had on A Rookie Mistake was someone messaged me and said, "Oh, I can tell that you had an experience with a relative and cancer. Like, am I right? Or, you know, you don't have to give me details," kind of thing. It's just that you've done it so empathetically and with so much compassion. And that was lovely to hear, because I have unfortunately had a lot of my parents as a girl to cancer. And so I think when it's raw and it's close to the bone, it's, you know, it's special. It's also really nerve-wracking because you've put yourself in like that and your own lived experiences. And when people can tell, you know that it's it's very much a you book.
Yes.
So, how is it going to be received? And is that how you as a person are being received? And, I try and distance myself from that. But yeah, there is special elements about every book, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And what about the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome or have faced?
I actually think that is probably Out of Bounds,
Yeah.
which, has my heart now, but I
Yeah.
wrote that book. And it's actually in the acknowledgements, so it probably won't come as a surprise to anyone who's finished the book. But I wrote that book under a lot of time pressure. And I think the pace of publishing these days is really fast. And you're either in that very, very top percentage we're talking about, where you can afford to put out one book every 1 or 2 years, or you're in the pool with everybody else, which is, okay, you've got to be putting out at least 2 books a year now, especially in romance. And fast, especially when, I'm still a lawyer, I'm a mum to young children, I'm looking after myself and lighting as well. So I ended up really squeezed on Out of Bounds, and I felt, to be honest, I knew when I submitted the manuscript to my editor, I knew there was something special there, but I also knew that it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And I think I even said that in the cover email when I submitted it. And I think the problem for me on that was that I just didn't have the time to fully work through the internal and external conflicts, which I think are just they're paramount in a romance to keep a reader entertained. And I think the main external conflict to the romance for me was about 70% of the way there when I wrote the book, or when I started writing the book. And I never really sat back and managed to just get at that extra 30%. And so what happened was, when I was really time pressed anyway, I then I essentially rewrote the book, and I rewrote it in a month, which alongside everything else in life was insane. And honestly, I was just spinning so many plates. I completely burnt out with that. And so comes the saboteur mindset, and, imposter syndrome comes in, and, oh, I'm no good at this. And, you kind of have to sit back and go, no, look how many books you've published. And really hard when you're in that negative Annie kind of mindset, to pull yourself back out. And so hard to write funny, because there are so many funny, comical moments in Out of Bounds, and then beautiful, soft, romantic moments. And it's really hard to write those when you're just not feeling funny and you're not feeling romantic. Just done. I shook up my whole writing routine. So I got it done, submitted it, and then I literally changed my entire writing process in terms of schedule and how I approach sitting down to my laptop, down to my desk, as a product of that. So that was really, that is the hardest book I've ever written.
Would you say it's probably your proudest moment, like in your career, to have written that in a month and to have it out now in the world?
I think I probably didn't appreciate it at the time. I think what I'm more proud of is the lessons learnt, honestly. I felt like I let myself down with the first draft of that book. And I'm kind of that straight A student kind of girl. That's my space. So to have felt like I didn't submit the very best work I could do, I felt like I'd let myself down. And I know that it was time pressure and things like that. And I'm so pleased that I ended up rewriting the book, because I love where it ended up. And the story was essentially the same. The journey the characters took is just vastly improved now on where that first draft was. So I think it's not so much the book as much as the fact that it really made me pause and say, you're a lawyer, you're an author having an author career, you're spinning all of these life plates, and I wasn't willing to let anything drop. And I think in one of the plates dropping with that first draft, it really made me reflect on more than books, on life, and how I was running around and exhausting myself and really not being able to give my best self to anything. And so I really shook up everything. And I think that's what I'm proud of, actually, in taking a step back and saying, okay, we realize something isn't quite working. broken, but we can do it better, and implementing things that it changes in my life to fix it. So I'd
Yeah.
say I'm really proud of that as much as the book
Of
itself.
the book itself, yeah. And that's great to be able to, do those self-reflections and say, I'm going to keep burning myself out if I do it that way, and then flipping it up. And I mean, in terms of just quickly on that, can you share what you changed, like your new routine of how you do that now?
Yeah, sure. So let me tell you what I was doing,
Yeah.
which probably sounds chaotic. So as I say, I'm a lawyer, during the day. At the morning, evenings, I'm looking after two small children. So,
Yeah.
from the breakfast routine and school and nursery drop off to the pickup and right through, to bedtime routine. So what I was doing was waking up. I'd, depending on the day, I'd go to the gym or do whatever form of exercise. I'd do the whole kid routine. I'd have my real condensed lawyer hours where I was just complete focus,
Yes.
not really moving, just complete focus. Then I would come round again to, okay, finish that, back to kids, doing all of the
Yeah.
bedtime, bath time, and all of that kind of stuff. And then I would have a shower. I'd do my social media for the day. And then maybe sort of 8 p.m. or later, I would sit down and write for up to 3 hours. And what I was doing was I was tired when I was putting my kids to bed because I've had a busy day. But
Yeah.
then I would sit and I'd have tea, I'd have coffee, I'd have 90% dark chocolate, which is my biggest vice. So I was waking myself up and going against my natural sleep rhythm. And
Mm.
actually, I don't think wholly productive. So what I was writing in maybe 3 hours in the evening was probably like 1,500 words, something
Yeah.
like that, editing maybe 10 pages, depending on what stage of edits I was in. So what I changed was I now have joined the 5 a.m. club. So I got a life coach. That was a big thing.
That's
I
interesting.
waved the white flag and said, okay, I need somebody objective to step into my
Yes.
life and say, not that I can't do things, but
Mm.
this is how you can do all of the things you want to do, but you
Yes.
can do them in a way that works better for you. That's what
Yeah.
I needed. So, I didn't need a therapist to tell me why I was a perfectionist and a control freak and all of that. I didn't know that. But what I did need was somebody to give me permission to do everything I wanted to do, but
Mm.
just in a sustainable way where I wasn't going to burn out and people could still receive the best version of me. And I could do something for myself, but I
Yeah.
have some brains left at the end of the day. So I joined 5 a.m. Club, and not just a pretentious thing, but actually a useful thing. So now I get up at 5, I stare at the sunlight for a minute to wake myself up. And I'm going to say that's much easier in summer than when I started out in early spring. And this was, I don't even think it was spring yet. So it was like in the morning when I woke up. And that was hard, just yawning away. But
I can imagine.
I have my water with lemon and salt,
Yeah.
my homemade electrolyte. I fill my cafetiere with my coffee and I sit down and write. And what's amazing is in an hour to an hour and a half, I can write as much, if not more, or edit as much, if not
Wow.
more, than I was doing in 3 hours in the evening before,
Yeah.
because all of my energy is there and I'm ready to go. I will then, depending on the day, I'll then exercise or jump straight into
Yeah.
kids. Then I'll do the kid piece. Then I do my legal day.
Yeah.
Then I do my kid piece again. Big difference for me is that when I naturally get tired in the evening and I put my kids to bed, I can go to sleep if I want
Yeah.
to. So I'm no longer work in the evening. So I'm not having the caffeine hits in the
Yes.
evening. So I'm sleeping better, which is just cyclical because then I wake up and I'm feeling refreshed and I'm ready to go again. So I've basically flipped my day on its head
Yeah.
and front loaded everything because I'm not on a screen at night either,
Yes.
which I think has been a massive change for me.
Mm.
So my screen time is now first thing in the morning, and I've stopped fighting against my body's natural rhythm.
Yes.
And I just feel like, I can read, I can listen to podcasts, I can just
Yeah.
sit still or you soak in the tub if I want to in the evening.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got some time back to self and
Yeah.
I can do my creative well and I can, have the thoughts that then mean when I sit down at 5 a.m. the next morning,
Yeah.
I'm ready to go again and drop straight back into
Yeah.
writing. I would say also one thing that I try and do, and a tip to writers is I try and leave off my writing the day before at a point where I know exactly what I'm going to write
Okay.
next. So then I can just drop back into it rather than sitting and staring at the laptop for half an hour and going, oh, where are we going next with this?
Yeah. Okay.
I am
It's a great tip.
increasingly a plotter.
Yeah.
I used to be kind of plotter, quasi pantser. Um, Now I still like characters to have the freedom to take the story where they naturally will,
Yeah.
and to let my mind go, oh, that's a better idea. Actually,
Mm.
let's get that emotion out through this scene. But I will know more firmly, kind of not just the beginning, middle, and end, but the key plot points in
Yes.
between. My conflict is usually plotted out, not in scene moments as such, but key conflict points.
Yeah.
Plotted out through the story. So yeah, that's just a little
That's
tip.
great. Yeah.
Yourself.
Super productive. And then let's talk about Out of Bounds. Okay, so it's out now, and I'm in Australia, and I was able to download it on my Kindle. So for anyone who's listening in Australia and New Zealand, you will be able to download it on your Kindle. Can't get a physical hard copy just yet, but will it come out in hard copy over here?
Yes, look, this is it.
Love it.
There it is. Isn't it beautiful? I know Rachel, I just huge shout out to Rachel Lawston, who illustrates my covers.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it obviously works with my editor at Boldwood and
Yes.
works with me, but he is just incredible. So
Oh,
yes, we did a split publication on this one. So the ebook came on the 11th of June, and the paperback, hardback audiobook for this one followed the 29th of June.
okay.
Which doesn't usually happen, but there were just various reasons for that this time round.
Yeah.
So
Who have you got voicing the characters for the audio?
do you know what? I haven't got it in front of me. Naomi Wood, there we go, and Darcy Miller. There we go. And they are fantastic. They are really fantastic.
And do you want to just give a brief overview of what Out of Bounds is about? I know we've touched on it briefly, but sell your book to us all.
I would love to. So I'm going to start with my female protagonist, Annie Quinn. So Annie is the little sister of Colton Quinn, who is a split end for fictitious American football team, the San Antonio Bears. We meet her in A Rookie Mistake. Even though each book in the series is a standalone, we meet her in that series. And when we meet her in A Rookie Mistake, she is pregnant with her first child. 2, she's a very young mum. She has to defer college through the pregnancy and to have the baby. And she is pregnant to a football star, one of her brother's friends from another team who is not interested. He wants nothing to do with it. So when we pick up in Out of Bounds, Annie is now a single mum with this horrific ex who's just been horrid to her, basically. Scorned by falling for the football star. She's going back to college to finish her degree. And she has also sadly lost her mum. So she has an awful lot going on. And one of the big problems in Annie's life is she can't drive, which in Texas is a really big problem. She can drive around her family ranch. She's a cowgirl. But in terms of getting to college, she's a little bit screwed. So she's relying on her brother Colton, whilst he's driving himself to football practice and back, drive her to college so she can study. So cue Tanner Pace, the captain and tight end football star for the San Antonio Bears, who was raised by a strong single mum, and he's just the ultimate cinnamon roll. He's a prankster and he jokes around a lot, but deep down he's just a lovely soul. And he steps in. He sees kind of that strength of his mother in Annie. So he steps in. He's like, look, let me teach you to drive. I'm not doing anything else other than playing golf on my off days anyway. So this is how they end up forced together. And the idea is he's just helping out his teammate's little sister, driving around the ranch. There are some hilarious driving incidents involving animal excrement and just some really god-awful driving. But I'll just let you discover those. But of course, whilst he is helping Annie, he sees all of these wonderful qualities about her. And whilst she's fighting the idea that she would ever fall for a football star again, and she really has too much going on in her life, Tanner's just very hard to not fall for. He's the little guy. And so, yeah, they strike up this taboo relationship because she is his teammate's and best friend's little sister. He is the brother's best friend. There's a years age gap as well, which Tanner does not take lightly. He sees that as a big responsibility, and they're friends, and neither of them really want to disrupt that. And of course, we have this huge conflict in the background with Annie's ex, the football player, who his team will also play the San Antonio Bears. So there's a huge kind of team rivalry there, as well as the whole interruption of the third person. So I wouldn't describe it as a love triangle, but the conflict is very, very present throughout the book.
And you do
instantly. Before I give away too much.
No, well, I read it and I instantly was like, oh, Tanner Pace, like, yeah, he's got a lot of qualities that you want out of a man. So,
I think one of the things about sports romance for me is that, particularly where the guy is the athlete, so where the book boyfriend is the athlete, is that idea that they are so physically strong and so focused and determined when it comes to sport. Then you contrast that with when they're so gentle, pretty much just her. And that's that's what I love to read. And so that was the real sweet spot that I wanted to hit with Tanner. So hopefully I did that.
You did it perfectly. So, Laura, where can people find you? I know social media, you're big on Instagram and TikTok. What's your...
Yeah, so I'm pretty much at Laura Carter Author. So my website is lauracarterauthor.com. My Instagram handle, that's where I'm probably most active, to be honest, is at Laura Carter Author. Facebook is at Laura Carter Author. My TikTok, somebody stole at Laura Carter Author. So I am at lauracarter.author on TikTok. Annoyingly, that's the only one. But yeah, I spend probably far too much time on social media, honestly. So yeah, if people want to come and hang out with me there, the upside is I get to see all of your reels and all of your snippets of the pod, and then run along and find the episode. So, it has its perks.
Yeah, give you a little snippet. So there'll be one of these for yours as well. But yeah, I've absolutely loved hearing your story. I think it's filled with so much passion and drive and determination. And I'm so happy that you are where you are. And I loved Out of Bounds. So I know everyone who picks up a copy is going to love it as well. It's just one of those feel-good rom-coms. So yeah, I've loved chatting to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.